All right. Hello, everybody. Looks like we've pretty much reached the end of the class. This is the last lecture day, and it's going to be a very short lecture. I have a list with 4 things on it, just some random things that hadn't really been mentioned yet that you might find useful. And then most of the time today was going to be about addressing questions that might still be hanging around for your final projects. Those are due this week. Everything's due on Saturday. So Saturday at 11:59 p.m. All of the assignments and everything's going to close and lock. So please make sure you have everything turned in by before 11:59 on Saturday. First thing Sunday morning, I'll get up and finish any last minute grading and get the grades turned in. And I do wake up early in the morning, so I'll probably be almost finished by like 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm usually finished by like 6:30. So first thing Sunday morning, I'll have the grades submitted. So please make sure everything's in by 11:59 p.m. on Saturday. Preferably before that. That way you're not pushing the last minute and having to worry about connection issues or anything like that. But there's a couple things I wanted to just mention because we haven't seen them yet this semester that might prove useful for you at some point. Let's see. I guess I'll start with this import thing. So like we've seen many times, I'm going to set up some HTML document. I'll get all the starters stuff in here. And I suppose I need to come up with a name for this. I'll just call this example. Nothing really springing to my mind, and the 4 things that I have on the list are very, they're not really related to each other, so there's no good names spring to mind. So the first thing I wanted to mention here has to do with external style sheets. In particular, we can import style sheets into style sheets. It was at least mentioned earlier in the semester that we can do more than one link tag. We could link to a style sheet and then link to another style sheet and do several like that. And the computer reads them in order so that any rules in this second style sheet will override something put in the first style sheet. But we can go even further than that. Like maybe we have a style sheet that that has most of the things we want on another site somewhere. From a previous job, we've got all this stuff set up, and we don't want to start over from scratch. So, well, obviously there's a copy and paste example, but we can import rules right into a style sheet. So I'm just going to put a section tag here with a couple paragraphs. Here's a paragraph. And some more words. And when we go to style this, maybe it's connected. So one example might be if you're doing business with another company and they already have a website. So instead of copying all that stuff over brand new, you just link to the style sheet on their website. That way, anything you have on your site that connects to theirs automatically picks up those style rules. So I'm going to make a style sheet here for that, maybe a section tag. Nothing too fancy here. The point of this is about importing stuff. I'll put a background color, sky blue, and color aqua, just throwing a couple names in there. That probably doesn't look very good. I'll call this other style.css. So we have this style sheet that already exists somewhere when we go to make a page. So seems like the most common use for this might be when doing business with another company that already has all of their style set up for their website, and you just want to access that. So on your page, obviously, I'm referring to making your own style sheet. So style sheet, href equals, I'll call it my style.css. Getting ready to create that, but a completely different one than this that has a couple style rules. I just want to bring those in. So I'll go ahead and create that file. Save this as mystyle.css. And at the very top, to access the style rules from that other sheet, put the keyword @import and then the URL of that other style sheet. So in this case, it's in the same folder, so other style.css. It needs to go at the very top. It's actually there's only one thing that can go before that. I might as well show that. This very rarely shows up, but we can do @charset, that specifies the encoding. By default, it's Unicode, UTF-8. But if for some reason you want something other than Unicode, that has to be the very first line. So obviously, if we encoded this, maybe used ANSI encoding instead, then all these rules, including that import statement, would need to specify the other encoding. So if you have something other than Unicode, that has to be the very first line. Otherwise, the import one would probably be the first line, and we almost never do anything very, very rarely do we break from Unicode encoding. That's pretty standard. So now, instead of putting any other style rules here, I'm just importing those from that first sheet. Some external style sheet stored somewhere on the internet. And I'm just going to bring in all the rules from that. And then that's what I'll link to with this site. Come here and okay, that was an awful color scheme. Sorry about that. But you can see it brought in those other style rules. And then in our style sheet, we can override those. So maybe if we have a paragraph tag, we want the color to be blue instead of whatever I typed in that first time. And then that comes later. So we get all the rules from the other style sheet. We get all the other rules first, and then override any of them that we want to change. So that can be very, very useful. It's very similar to what we would get putting multiple link tags in, but it ties the style sheets together. And we haven't really seen it this semester, but in the long run, a lot of the popular CMS, that's content management service type sites, such as WordPress, all of the HTML code and stuff is generated and is kind of a mess to dig through, but the style sheet is usually still manually handled. So doing something like that, this line becomes a lot more important. And obviously we can import more than one, and it just goes in order. So the second one we import would override any rules from the first one. But that can be an incredibly useful thing. I'm going to add the word section because the next thing I'm going to show, I don't want blue letters on there. But that can be an incredibly useful thing because often businesses work together, right? We'll have links to some other business on our site and vice versa. And when we show something from them on our site, it'd be nice to just grab their style sheet. That way we don't have to redo it all from scratch. It's probably the most common one for that. But it's just the very first thing, just add import and then the URL to that other style sheet that you want to pull in. And any media queries and things like that will come right with it. I'll put something in here right now. At media screen and I don't know, max width of 800 pixels. That'll probably work. At that point, make the section background color green. Y'all have seen media queries before. That's just kind of a random change that we should be able to see. So once again, that'll be imported with this. So if I reload the page and then change to the size here, oh yeah, that worked. You see as the size changes, once we pass 800 pixels, we're getting those rules from the other style sheet. So that one can be kind of useful. Depending on what you're going to do, I just wanted to show it. It'll save you a lot of time and a mess, because obviously we could just take everything on that other style sheet, copy it, and paste it into our style sheet here. But that's going to add a whole lot of lines of code, right? And if they're separate, it helps to keep things organized. And especially if you have several imports and then your own rules, it really helps as far as organization. There's that. And yeah, and again, make sure that's the very first thing. The only thing that can go before that is if you need to change the character encoding, which we very rarely do, because a lot of times if we leave Unicode, there's a good chance we need to include the encoding scheme with the thing, because the browsers all work with Unicode. Unicode text instructions. Let's see. Yeah. The next thing might be kind of useful. I'll put another paragraph tag down here. Here's a paragraph with some highlighted words in it. I'm not feeling very creative today, but maybe you want to do some highlighting and quickly highlight words. We can put a span tag in there to make and change the color or something to make those stand out. But that's such a common thing. There is a tag ready to go for it. When I was sitting around thinking about stuff, I couldn't remember talking about this tag before. It seems like this might have fit somewhere earlier in the semester, and I just forgot about talking to it slipped my mind that we talked about it. But there's this tag mark, which just highlights a section of words. So just put some yellow highlighting right on top of these words. And if you want to change to a different color than yellow, that's an easy thing to do in the CSS. It's just the background color. Open up the inspector here. This paragraph. You can see there's the default. Whoops, there's a little thing in my way. The default setting for them, so you can just add some colors in. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this tag. There we go. So you can just change that background color. It's just a background color issue if you want something different than yellow. But typically that would be used to when we actually want highlighting, which often yellow is a standard color for that. So that's probably what we would want to use. Just something that I thought might be useful for you. Let's see, I'm going to add a couple breaks in here. Oh, I don't think our textbook mentioned this. Along with the break line, there's also WBR. That has to do with wrapping. So it's if you want the text to highlight at a certain point, you can put that WBR in, and notice that it didn't put a line break in. Where's that at? That's in a paragraph. So if I come over here, and change the width of that to, I don't know, 123 pixels maybe. Let's see what that looks like. You can see once it was shorter, it tried to force an extra line break at that point. So that's WBR is a wrap break, wrapping break. It's it won't always break the line there. There's HTML, but it makes a suggestion of where you want that line break to happen if there's going to be word wrapping. You think of it as like a preference for word wrap. I'm going to add some lines here. There we go. So the next one I wanted to show, excuse me, we can't necessarily do a whole lot with it in this class, but a very common thing is going to be graphics and artwork and things like that, right? So one tag that we haven't talked about this semester is the canvas tag. And this is basically a blank drawing surface. You want to give it a width and a height, I don't know, do like 700 pixels wide, height of 430 pixels, and it has to have an ID. And the reason it has to have an ID is because with this tag, we do all the drawing in JavaScript. And there's no line breaks. I'm going to put a paragraph tag around that. And then a button underneath it. I'll just say draw. So if I reload the page, you can see there's a blank surface. We can't really see anything. Open up the inspector. And hover over that. We can highlight and kind of see where the spot's at, but from the button underneath it, we can tell something's there. And it's basically just a blank drawing surface. And we draw on it with JavaScript. So we haven't really seen much JavaScript this semester, but I'll create a file called draw.js. And then inside of a function, I'll call it start, we can set our scripting up to draw on that thing. There's two things we'll need in order to do that. We have to have a reference to the canvas element itself. So we have our keywords saying we have a spot to draw on. I'm just going to call it scene. That's what I always call them. And to do that, we'll look at the document, get some element off the document based off the ID it has, and pass in that ID name we gave it. So I gave it the ID of can. That way we can refer to it. So we need that for a few things, nothing in the simple example today. And also we need the context of which we're going to draw on it. I usually just use the word sketch. You'll often see that in reference material as CTX, or sometimes we'll actually spell out context. But we ask for that scene, that reference we made to our canvas element, and then call this method get context. And there are a lot of different contexts. 99% of it is either going to be 2D or there's several 3D ones. WebGL is probably the most common 3D one. I'm just going to do some quick 2D stuff just to demonstrate this. But that gives us a reference to a drawing surface, and a reference to a way to draw on that surface. So then we can kind of start putting some lines on it. Like sketch dot begin a path. I'll just draw a line. Move to some point on there. I think I made that 700 by 450. So I could come over 23 pixels and down 127 pixels. And from there, draw a line to, I don't know, 247 pixels over, 234 pixels down. I just kind of pick some random numbers there. We pass in this command stroke, which means to actually draw the line kind of like it implies. And sketch dot close path. So start a path, all the instructions, all the lines and arcs and curves and things to be included in that path, instruction to draw the line and then close that path. And then that will give us something drawn on there, and I'll call that from a click of a button. I know we haven't seen much JavaScript, but I wanted to at least mention this HTML element. So I'm with the button, I'll just add it so that when that button is clicked, it's going to call that start method, which right now just draws a line. So I reload the page. Oh, oops, I forgot something. I have to refer to that script I just created. So I'm going to come up to the head tag and put a script in there, source equals draw.js. So just a reference to that script that I just made. Which again, I know we haven't seen much of it. I just wanted to mention this tag because that's a very common one. I hit draw, see it draws a little line on there. So like if you wanted to embed a video game, make a video game and embed a game in your web page, it would probably go into a canvas element. Most game engines will output the code for that. And then you have all this JavaScript code and you just need a canvas element to refer it to. I'll put a couple things on here. I'll start another path, sketch an arc, part of a circle basically. So we need some sort of center point. So like 201 pixels over, 23 pixels, 236 pixels down. That gives us the center point of a circle. And then whatever the radius of that circle is going to be, maybe 28 pixels. All these units have to be in pixels. When we're dealing with JavaScript, the only unit we have is pixels unless we're passing stuff back to a CSS sheet. And then we have to say how far around the circle it goes, which is in radians. If anybody's had trigonometry and measured circles that way, so like 2 pi is all the way around the circle. sketch dot stroke to draw it. So basically just the information to draw a circle, a radius for it, the center and a radius, and then a start and a stop point. Yeah, so just kind of drew a whole circle or maybe a half a circle. Pi is halfway around a circle. I'll do that. So just change the start point still at 0 degrees. And then it's going to go to, radians, not degrees. So it goes to pi radians, which if you hadn't tried trigonometry class, that's another way we have to measure angles, where we measure the angle by the distance of the radius around the circle. So we take the radius of the circle and count that as 1. And anytime we move that far around the outside, it gives us another way to measure angles. So like degrees are the center of a circle and radians are the outside of the circle. Just 2 different ways to measure. And so we can go through and draw all that stuff, which can be a lot of fun if you're it's a little time consuming. You probably load pictures in here. I'll just draw a quick smiley face or something to throw on there and show you how to do this. I go to paint. Let's see, draw a circle, no outline, solid fill. Whoops. I'll draw some sort of circle and so like a quick smiley face, nothing fancy. I just needed some picture. Once we have a picture, in order to draw a picture on there, we have to have it loaded into our web page as an image or either an HTML image tag or an SVG tag. And the reason I wanted to show this is if we're putting it on the canvas tag, such as for an animation, we're just going to throw it up there right now, but a more reasonable usage would be to set a timer and keep changing it and get an animation going. If we're going to do that, we probably don't want it just showing on the page, but we have to have it here in order to access it from the script. So when we set this up, smile.ping, so that part's all the same, just image tag, bring in the source. Sort of a quick and easy way to adjust it is to bring in the style attribute and set the display to none. And that way the image tag doesn't actually show on the HTML page, but it is in the document, so we can access it from the script that's connected to the document. And then in order to access it, we have to have an ID. So I'll just give it the ID of smile. That's important in the scripting stuff. Y'all will see that when you take the JavaScript class. I believe quite a few people are registered to take that. And once we have an ID in it, when we call this sketch.begin some drawing path, the sketch, which remember is just the context with which we're drawing. So that's this get context, in this case, just 2D, either 2D or 3D drawing context. And we draw image, and then we just need the XY coordinates of where it's going. So 321 over, 123 down. And then what image do we want to draw? And what goes here is the ID that we gave that image tag or the SVG tag. Or if you're doing WebGL, you can the reference to load in the 3D objects. And that one, we're not, the image is already drawn, so we don't need the stroke command to actually draw the lines in it. But that gives us a way to load in images and draw a drawing surface. Uh-oh. Do I need the stroke command? Maybe I do need that. Or maybe I drew off my surface. How big was the thing? Sorry. I apparently made a typo while talking somewhere. Oh, there is an error. Oh, and as you move into your JavaScript class, this will be really useful to see. Whenever you go to the inspector, you'll get a little red dot if there's an error. Must have made a typo. Smile. Did I spell it wrong? Oh, whoops. I put that on the wrong side. Sorry. We'll try that. There we go. So we can draw lines and curves and put images in all from a JavaScript file. The ID goes first. I'm not sure why I typed it last to begin with. We have to say what image it is, and then our X coordinate, and then the Y coordinate. Which obviously to do an animation, then we just set up a little timer and move that around or something. But hopefully that wasn't too confusing. You'll see JavaScript before too long. I mostly just wanted to make sure you're aware of the canvas element, because that's a very common thing. And if you say want to embed like a video game into a web page, most of the popular game engines will output JavaScript that draws onto a canvas element. So then you'll just take and set up that canvas element in your web page and then connect the script to it. That way you can have other stuff on the page beside, like the game engines will output the canvas element, but that's all. So you might want to be able to recognize that so you can put that in other pages or add stuff to it. But it gives us a way to draw on our website dynamically. All the drawing is done with JavaScript, so it happens dynamically. We can change it as needed. And yeah, hopefully that wasn't too confusing when I was putting that script together. I know we haven't seen much of that. I just want to really just be aware of the canvas tag. It's a place to draw stuff at. There's one more I want to put on here is one of our most common forms of document is going to be a PDF, right? We use those those are very, very common. And we can even open PDFs in browsers. But sometimes we might have a PDF and want to put it into our page, actually include it. That's not the only thing we can do with this tag, but one of the easiest ways to do that is to use this object tag. So an object tag it refers to some sort of known data type we have, such as a PDF, or we can include instructions for whatever type of document or whatever file type we have. But it takes some completed file, something that would stand alone, a PDF, an image, anything like that. And this is just the generic one. There's not a PDF tag. We don't have to do this with images because we already have an image tag. But a PDF, we don't have a tag specifically for PDFs. And to do this, it's called the data attribute. So object tag and then data equals some PDF and then a width and a height with maybe 700, height of 500, that'd probably be a good size. And I haven't put the data in yet because I have to find a PDF. I'm sure I have one on my computer somewhere. Oh, I know where there's one. I come over to school stuff. Here we go. I have the PDF for accessing the school's computers remotely. Hopefully y'all have looked at this at some point this semester. It's posted on our Ivy Learn site, but a PDF, so we can open that in a browser, but maybe we would rather have that information embedded right into our web page. So I'm going to take that and copy it over to this same folder to make it easier. And I think I'll rename that while I'm at it because that looks like a good chance a typo would happen trying to type that in. So I'm going to call it remote.pdf. So with the PDF there, then the data attribute of this can just refer to that PDF or any type of file, whatever file we have that we want to embed. And just stick it in an object tag. And I'm going to add some line breaks below it. That way that way it's not at the very bottom of the page. I can scroll a little past it. So that gives us this little container. You can see it has the PDF with all the normal controls we're used to seeing with a PDF. You pull up the bookmarks, zoom in and out, and make it fit. Turn sideways, I guess. I never use that button. But all the buttons we're used to seeing with a PDF are built right in there. And in such a common format, it can be nice just to include those in your site. That way things are still viewable. People can see that information that looks like a PDF. It's something that we can hit print to get a download of. Something that users are going to be familiar with. So that one can be a very useful tag. So that was the 4 things I had on here for today. Just a few little odds and ends. This import style sheet can be incredibly useful, especially if you're doing work with another company. That way you don't have to copy and paste all of their style rules in or try to copy their style rules. You can just ask for their style sheet and then start there. That way your stuff matches up. This highlighting tag, it seems like that would have fit somewhere earlier in the semester, but I don't remember talking about it. Obviously, The whole point of highlighting is make certain words stand out. So if you need certain words to stand out on the page, that can be useful. With the canvas element, I just want you to be aware of it as you move forward and start learning about JavaScript. That can be incredibly useful. That's a really nice one. You can draw on. It gives you a drawing surface on your HTML that you just draw with JavaScript on. Lines and curves and I think rectangles about the only pre-built shape. There's not a lot of pre-built shape. You have to build them all from scratch. But you can load in images and then all the scripting stuff, set up timers and dynamic things to get animations. And then this one, the object tag, has a lot of uses because there are a whole lot of file types that we might want to show on a web page that we don't necessarily have a tag to put right in there like we do with an image tag. So we can use the object tag and just bring in the data for that. And that tends to show up with PDFs a lot. Then you can embed the PDF in your page instead of just linking to it. And it kind of makes it look nice. And the user will know what to do because it'll be the standard PDF controls that they see. So just a couple things there. Any questions about those? Yeah, I didn't think there would be too many questions about that, but I assume you all probably have some questions regarding final projects, right? So
just a few.
Okay. So yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking for today. That was all the lecture material I had. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll kind of start addressing questions. Or should I keep recording? Any comments on that?
I don't care if you record me. I mean, who knows? I might have a decent question.
Yeah, that's what it suddenly popped in my mind. Is like other people might have the same question, and I know several people like work during the day, so they can only watch the videos afterwards. But they can also email me with questions and stuff. But I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll address the questions one-on-one.